Okay, we're now, you'll be glad to hear, are to the last segment, part 4. And in this case, we'll be talking about not the evidence, not more evidence, but what the significance is of the evidence that we've seen, and from a physics point of view, what the real physics is behind it, as opposed to the classical physics, which cannot possibly explain any of it. The evidence that I presented to you is actually but a small fraction of similar results that are recognized by first-rate scientists and institutions at the leading edge of discovery. And I've been blessed by knowing many of them and working with many of them, and they are certainly realizing that the truth is quite a bit different than what has been taught. And there's a lot more evidence in almost all of these categories and examples that you could find that illustrate the same paradigm. This evidence that you've seen leads us to a different understanding, to an understanding very different from the classical teaching that has powerful and exciting and hopeful implications. The phenomenon of remote viewing provides a strong implication about the nature of man. We've discussed this. But first of all, one of the things which it illustrates is an aspect that I will tell you that mankind has multiple levels of awareness. Well, it's well known even in conventional science that there are multiple levels, at least 2. Classical science would say, well, there's waking consciousness, and there's the subconscious. Those are 2 levels. The subconscious is controlling, what muscles I'm using when I'm waving my arms. I'm not having to think about that. And it's keeping my heart beating and, all that kind of stuff. It's involved with the autonomic nervous system and all that. But actually there are more levels, higher levels of awareness. I've told you that in remote viewing, it's my perception that what we're actually doing is accessing our highest level of awareness, which is omniscient. Within us lies the potential capacity to access all information by connecting with that level. Our highest level of awareness is omniscient, and with that we can literally access potentially and understand the entire nature of creation. I mean, we don't actually, if we quiet the noise of our lower self and really get plugged into our coherent connection with our higher self, we can literally get the answer to anything. And if we're not getting that, it's just because we're blocking it. It's not that we don't all have that awareness at our highest level. We all do. But that's to me a really remarkable thing, that you can actually potentially get information on and understand everything. The whole business of research and development, no longer is actually relevant in that case. You don't have to research anything. You can just go get the answer. And development, the same thing. You don't have to develop things. You can actually just build them and have them do what you want them to do. And we'll talk about in this segment one example of a technology that was created just that way, by just accessing the information within us via a small team and building it and having it do exactly what it's supposed to do. No research, no development, much more efficient, cost effective. The evidence presented on intuition and telepathy in pets, independent of distance from an owner, implies that they can reflect intelligence way beyond what's classically thought possible. And again, I would say that the indication when you see phenomenal behavior out of an animal or even an insect, it's allowing you to see behind the curtains, so to speak, to how everything really is. And I'll tell you a brief anecdote because I can't resist. I have so many experiences that I treasure that have been part of this whole journey. But along that line, I was at Penn State University one day, and I was about to meet with my close friend Rustum Roy for breakfast. And I got there a little bit early, and I was out on the lanai of this restaurant. And I decided to just sit down at an empty table. There was nobody else out there at the time. And there are gardens right off of the lanai there, just a few yards away. And I sit down at this table, and it's a big round table of nice porch furniture. And I look, and here's a great big praying mantis sitting there on the table. And the thing's about this long, 4 inches or so long, over on the table. And I looked at him, and he's sitting there, and he looks at me, and I think, well, geez, you know, there's this beautiful garden out there, and you're on a table that doesn't have anything to eat or anything else. And I thought, well, maybe I'll offer him to take him and put him over on the plant. And so I mentally sent this thought to him, and by that time I'd had a lot of experience at mentally communicating with animals with some degree of success at times, phenomenal success occasionally. And so I sent him this thought, and he's just there looking at me. Nothing's happening, you know, nothing at all. And I suddenly realized that I'd violated one of the tenets that I've come to understand about communicating with animals. If you see them as down there and you're up here, you're not communicating with them at all. You know, you'll get the dumb animal syndrome. You know, but then I thought, oh, well, how ridiculous! Of course he's capable of flying from here to there. Of course he knows the garden's over there. He needs me to bring him over there like a hole in the head. And you know, so I looked at him again, and I just sent him love. And you know, without offering to cure his incapacity that he didn't have. And you know, I looked at him, and all of a sudden he wakes up, animates, looks at me, you know, looks right dead in the eye, and he makes a beeline for me across the table, like this, looking, you know, the whole time right in my eye. And my arm's on the table, I'm leaning on it, and he comes right over, and he gets on my hand, and he starts walking up, you know, my arm, you know, still with his eye right on my eye. And I think, geez, this guy's 4 inches long, and you know, you know, no problem for my arm, but I hope he doesn't go step in my eye, you know, because he's looking me right in the eye. And you know, so he's walking up and just got his eyes riveted on me. And so I just, you know, I decide, well, I'll just offer as a courtesy to bring him over there, not that he has any shortcoming. And so I put my hand up. He steps onto my hand and stops. I get up, I walk over to the rose bush, I put my hand down, and he steps off. And, you know, I thought, man, that's just beautiful. I love it. And, you know, I've seen so many of those kind of phenomenal things happen where when you see everything as reflecting the same infinite intelligence, and it's just a different expression of infinite consciousness, you know, you get a completely different behavior out of it. And I've seen that with, you know, flies. I've seen it with deer. I've seen it with my own dog all the time. I see it with lots of things. And, you know, it's just so astonishing how amazing the universe really is. And anyway, the large body of compelling evidence of past life experiences, together with extensive evidence of conscious experience, not being able to occur without brain functionality, implies that we have a continual non-physical existence that's independent of our physical body, and consciousness isn't localized in the brain. Human thought and intention affecting the matter, devices and DNA independent of distance, and evidence of remote healing and destruction of cell cultures, healing of individuals, instantaneous healing of deliberate bodily damage, revitalization of denatured seeds, universality of placebo effects across different modalities. All of those imply a profound truth. And the truth is, consciousness is primary. Everything else stems from consciousness. If you want to understand the universe, fundamentally, consciousness is basic to everything else. Quantum physics has understood some elements of this for quite some time. Max Planck, 100 years ago, began to understand something about the nature of matter at its most basic levels, fundamental levels. In the 1940s, he made the comment, "There is no matter as such." You know, well, that's a pretty astonishing statement. And Werner Heisenberg, one of his students and co-workers of his, made the comment, the smallest units of matter are not, in fact, physical objects. Well, that's kind of a surprising statement of a physicist, that when you get down to the smallest elements of matter, it's not physical. And then Ernst Schrödinger, another cohort of Max Planck in quantum physics, the ultimate particles constituting matter are, as it were, pure shape, nothing but shape. Well, what does that mean? You know, I mean, the smallest units of matter, when you go down to subatomic, quote, particles, they're not particles. They're not even matter. They're not physical. They're just shape. Well, how can something be matter and just be a shape? Said differently, they're ideas. They're ideas. A shape without any physical existence is an idea. That's what it is. And consciousness is the creator of ideas. So then Hans-Peter Durr, who I was on an advisory board for 8 years with him, brilliant man, physicist, the late Hans-Peter Durr, who was a student of Werner Heisenberg and became ultimately the managing director of the Max Planck Institute of Physics, which is the #1 institute of physics in the world. In his lectures would say numerous times when I heard him lecture, matter is not made of matter. It's non-physical. So that's what quantum physics has to say on the subject, that when you really get down to it, what looks like it's here all the time and is solid and all that isn't. It's a perception that we have of it. Going back in time to 1913, Albert Einstein and Otto Stern proposed the existence of a ground state energy field, the so-called zero-point field, that is pervasive through all space. They said there must be something like this. In 1948, there was an experiment at the Phillips Research Laboratory by Hendrik Casimir that produced what is now called the Casimir effect, which seemed to confirm the hypothesis. Make a long story short, there was a hypothesis that if in fact there was a ground state energy field, then if you took two plates and you polished them to a super high level and you brought them super close, there would be a force that would repel them and keep them apart. There would be something there, which would be the ground state energy field. And that was measured and seemed to indicate, yeah, that's actually true. I will tell you that my conclusion, based upon both the information that I received directly and the evidence that by directly I mean from my inner self, and the evidence that I see around me, that there is indeed a ground state field that pervades all of the universe. That field is actually a field of light from which all that is observable manifests. Now, when I say light, I will tell you that my perception is that the classical physics understanding of light is in error. The whole idea of the, quote, speed of light and all of that, that's in error. Light doesn't speed, it just is. There's a field that runs through everywhere that is light, but light is essentially a field that one might view as essentially the sum of all possibilities of existence existing at once. That is the light field that pervades all of the cosmos, which cosmos itself is infinite. Anyway, the light field, as I say, I just said that, has a property of symmetry. That is, the light field itself contains all possibilities, plus, minus, forward, backward, everything that can be is within that light field. It's all potentials existing at once. And it has a property of symmetry, meaning it's balanced. And the significance of that is In its ground state, the light field that is pervasive is not observable. There's nothing that actually you can observe when it's in its ground state because it is symmetrical and because it's pervasive. And the analogy which one could utilize would be, imagine you're above the ocean on a flat, calm day. And you're in the middle of the ocean, so you can't see any horizon, and you're looking down. So the only thing you see is the ocean, and it's flat, calm, and let's say it's deep enough you can't see the bottom. To you, it then would look like there's nothing there. There's nothing there. But in fact, it is. And now a breeze comes up, and you get some texture in the surface. There are waves, and you say, oh, there's the ocean. I see it. Well, you see the waves in the ocean, but the bulk of the ocean you don't see. Well, it's the same thing with this light field. It's the pervasive field that runs through everything. It doesn't move. It doesn't have a speed. It just is the sum of all possibilities at once.
And would you equate that with what's often called the void?
Yeah, there is no void. There is a light field that's pervasive. The void is essentially the light field without texture being generated in it. It's like the ocean with no waves being generated. And whatever is manifested in any type of experience and in any dimension of experience and in any universe in the cosmos, and there are many, is in fact caused by the generation of texture in that field. And all that we can observe, everything that we observe, is texture in the field. The field is pervasive, and it runs through everything, and therefore you can't get a detector to detect the field itself because the field runs through the detector. All detectors detect by virtue of comparison. If the field is in the detector as much as it's out of the detector, the detector is blind, and it can't detect the field itself. But if you generate texture or a difference in the field here versus here, now it can see something. And that's what we see when we see all of these different realities and every variation of matter, energy, or any other form of experience. Those are all textures being generated in the field. What generates texture in the light field is consciousness generates thoughts or fields of information, and those fields of information interact with the light field to pull out a certain set of experiences which we perceive as manifested reality in whatever reality we're operating in. So probably the biggest discovery in the last 100 years is that thought creates a field. When you think a thought, it creates a field. It creates a field which is non-physical. It's a field of literally pure information. Well, if you think about information, just information per se, not a physical embodiment of it, that's non-physical. And thought fields are real, and they comprise information, but they're not energy or matter. They can cause and do cause the existence of any and all energy and matter that you will ever see. And in fact, the realities that we're experiencing, let's say this reality right here, that we're experiencing, is a set of experiences and details that have been drawn by the light field by a combination of the collective consciousness which is agreeing on a sort of a theater that you're operating in, and the basic operating rules in that locale, that universe, that planet, that galaxy, etc., that locale, and your individual consciousness, which is influencing how you're perceiving it. That is, we're all able to look at those letters there and say they're yellow, unless we're colorblind, but we could all agree they're yellow, but you have no idea whether your yellow is my yellow. It's just we're agreeing they're yellow. So we all have a certain lens through which we're seeing everything that is being influenced by our emotions, experience, etc. But it's a combination of the collective consciousness and individual consciousness that is creating reality. Thought fields, as I say, are non-physical fields, and they're comprised of information or ideas. classical non-physical fields are, the first 5 there are the ones that are accepted by the mainstream scientific community. Sorry, electric, magnetic, gravitational, and strong and weak nuclear attraction fields. The sixth is a field that exists that is not recognized by classical physics and classical science, which is a field of information. It turns out that the information field is actually what gives rise to all of the rest of them. And actually, in our time, the Russians were the first to really begin to understand the existence of information fields and understand the properties of information fields. About 10 years ago now, I partnered with one of the top Russian scientists from the former Soviet Union that was fairly central to the development of that kind of information in the former Soviet Union. And they had actually not only come to understand the existence of information fields and those fields in their relevance to all of the kinds of phenomena that I was talking about today, but also their understanding was high enough. They were able to develop technologies where they could synthetically generate information fields rather than just using thought. They knew that thought created information fields, but they also created technologies that could synthetically create information fields. It's some of that information carried forward to different technologies than they developed that we used actually to create Lightfield. For those of you who know what Lightfield is, and those of you who don't, we'll be talking about it shortly. So, information fields have the following properties. First of all, they affect probability. One of the things that is now known in quantum physics, in leading edge quantum physics, is that matter and energy are discontinuous. They're not here all the time. We look at this computer here and we say, well, it's there. It was there 10 minutes ago. It'll be there an hour from now unless I pack it up. Its existence is established. It's always there in the short term. Actually, it isn't. Actually, it's now known in quantum physics, even before the understanding of information fields, which is leading edge physics, it's known that all matter and energy actually winks into and out of existence continually, like it's flashing in and out of existence. Like if any of you are aware of how the former types of TVs worked with the cathode ray tubes, you would look at an image on the TV and it looks like it's always there. Well, actually it isn't. It's got some phosphors on the screen and an electron gun that's regenerating it at very high speed over and over and over again. But the speed of vibration of your eyesight is so slow by comparison, it looks like it's always there. But you get out your high-speed camera and say, I want to take a picture of this program on TV. Click, you get a dot. And you say, what happened to the picture? It's because that shutter speed's faster than the rastering speed. And so it's looking at the dot that's going over there generating the image. But your eye is integrating it all and thinking that it's always there. It isn't. And matter's the same way. And that's known in leading edge classical but quantum physics, that matter and energy reestablish themselves at something called Planck's angular frequency. That's 10 to the 43rd times a second. That's like real fast. That's like a trillion, billion times, a second. But anyway, it happens to be a number that is the rate at which matter and energy are reestablishing itself. And every time it reforms itself, you might think, oh, it's just reforming the same thing. This was a glass of water 10 minutes ago. It's still a glass of water, unless I've drank some. But actually, it's capable of being influenced to be different every time it reestablishes itself. And what controls the probability, it's always being reestablished according to a probability function, which the collective consciousness is influencing. So, and in fact, that actually relates to these random number generators where all of a sudden collective consciousness is changing probability and it's changing their output to be non-random. So anyway, information fields or thought fields or fields of ideas, which have not only some reality, they are the basis of all reality. Those actually control and influence the probability of anything being anything in particular. Every time it reestablishes itself 10 to the 43rd times a second. So they cause both the manifestation and the demanifestation or modification of properties of energy and matter. So consciousness is primary and it's really powerful. As a matter of fact, it's totally powerful. It gives rise, as I say, to all of the classical 5 fields recognized by physics. It's also extra-dimensional. So now we're going to introduce another concept here, that actually existence is multidimensional. And a dimension of existence you can think of as a frequency band. That is, when we're in the 3rd dimension and perceiving what we can with our hardware and touch, taste, smell, feel, thoughts, eyes, etc., we're able to perceive a certain frequency band. If the frequency is too low, we don't see it. If the frequency is too high, we don't see it, or feel it or anything else. If you could raise your frequency, your operating frequency of this aspect of yourself high enough, what you would see is this reality dissolve and another reality take its place where there's stuff going on all the time too. But in a different operating system that's a higher frequency operating system where there are different possibilities possible that were not possible in the lower frequency, etc., etc. And there are many different dimensions of existence. In what I'll call Universe 3, which is where most of us started out in this particular life experience, there are 12 dimensions. There are 12 bands of different existences going on simultaneously that are different realities with different operating rules, and et cetera, et cetera.
With some communication among them or none?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, probably getting a little ahead of the story, but I think it's just as well to throw it out now as any time. We ourselves are actually way more amazing than we think we are. We're multidimensional. And this is one aspect of yourself that is having this experience that, for purposes of experience, is disconnecting its awareness from the other aspects of yourself and having this experience. But there are higher aspects of yourself having experiences in the other dimensions of existence. As a matter of fact, you are quite amazing. You're an idea, fundamentally, that is manifested in these different forms and operating in these different theaters of experience, where you are actually, or an aspect of you, of the greater you, is present in every single dimension of every single universe. There are all these different universes, and they have different operating systems and different realities, and you're in all of them. But this aspect of your consciousness, which is having this experience, for most of us has become disconnected from the awareness of the rest of them. You can reconnect with that, but for most of us, the rules that we've agreed to when we come in, you check your memory at the door when you come in, and you get it back when you leave. So, those are typically, it's more complex than that, but typically that's kind of what's going on. And when you're in this play, and that's really what it is, it's a construct, a play that where you've decided to be a certain personality in a certain reality and have certain experiences collectively and individually, you're having those experiences with this aspect of yourself. But you can, in fact, by going within and cultivating, silencing the noise, and by setting aside all the programming that tells you that you're just a piece of meat or something here, arrived by accident, run by your brain and all of that stuff. If you can set all of that stuff aside and get past that to the reality, you can actually reconnect with your higher self and your awareness of other aspects of yourself, other universes, other experiences. I said that information fields are extra-dimensional. I was just describing dimensions of existence within a given universe. There are some universes that have more than 12 dimensions, for example. Some have 15. There are numerous. Some have less than 12. But some don't have the lower dimensions. Some don't have any equivalent to the third dimension, or the second, or first, or fourth, or even fifth. Excuse me, there are many, many different varieties of experience out there. But information fields cause the existence of those dimensions, cause the operating systems, cause the realities, etc. And so they're extra-dimensional. And the light field is pervasive as extra-dimensional. A given file cabinet of experience, so to speak, is defined in a frequency band and with certain operating principles that is one experience, one theater for experience within the greater realm of the cosmos. I'm sure this is all rather woo-woo, but it is what it is. The properties of information fields are that they have a property of non-locality. There's no inverse exponential effect with distance. Information fields can create effects regardless of distance. In fact, space and time are both constructs. They're constructs that have properties specific to a given realm that has been created by consciousness as a theater of experience, both the collective and your individual experience of it. Because they're extra-dimensional and have no energy content themselves, they cause a manifestation of energy, but they're not energetic. They have no speed of light limitation. And actually, the speed of light, as I say, is a misnomer. Light doesn't speed, it just is. But when you have a beam of light go from here to there, and it seems like it went at a certain speed, all that is a waveform that traveled from here to there through a field of light that makes it look like the light moved. It's just you manifested what we call light, here and then here and here and here and here. As a matter of fact, there really is no movement in existence. If I take a ball and throw it to you, the ball that you're catching over there isn't the ball that I threw. This one stopped existing, the next one existed, the next one existed, etc., until one manifested at your end. But it's actually all a manifestation, and the speed of certain waveforms that are created by consciousness within a given construct are not fundamental. That is, if you go to different dimensions, there are different speeds and different operating systems. So, there are some things that are absolute, like the light field, the information fields, etc., and the rest of the things are relative in terms of the specific experiences. So, other properties of information fields, they have what are called torsional properties. Information fields have a certain right-handedness or left-handedness to them that create different effects. They will be perceived to create spin effects on subatomic particles. Again, there's no movement, but that's a perception. Manifesting, in a toroidal fashion. They have a property. Unlike electric fields and magnetic fields where opposites attract, information fields like attracts like and opposites repel. And that actually is the reason all of us are sitting here. Since we all have information fields that surround our physical presence, we will tend to, with those information fields, attract like information fields to ourselves. And experiences that resonate with us, we will tend to attract to ourselves and be attracted to them across space and time. it's a phenomenon of like attracts like in information fields. It's the reason why Lightfield, for example, does not advertise, never has advertised. It's all word of mouth, but people show up and, you know, they come. And if you put that out as a business plan in Harvard Business School, they'd laugh you out of town. You know, well, let's see, we're going to form a technology, we're going to have clients come, but we're not going to advertise. But if people happen to tell them about it, they'll come, maybe. And it's going to be funded by donations, but we're not going to ask for any. We'll just give them an opportunity to make a donation. And we're going to operate it with all volunteers, but we're not going to ask any volunteer to be an operator. They're all going to ask us to be operators. Now, more than 50 people have done that, and they operate the unit. You know, I mean, you look at all that, and I mean, they just, you know, it goes tilt like, you know, you'd be laughed out of town at Harvard Business School for that. But it's all stems from the coherence and frequency that's being generated there and attracting people of like coherence and frequency, and, you know, and it works. It's physics, you know. And similarly, unlike repels in information fields. People that are not resonant with what you're resonant with, they'll tend to not be attracted into your life. And you know. Also, a property of information fields is that you can condition space with information. For example, the light field that's been generating there now for 2009, 2010, 6 years, been generating a field there. If you took that unit and moved it somewhere else, and you just went and lay down in that area, you would find that there was a heck of a field there. Even though it's not being generated anew, it has taken on the characteristics of those things. And a lot of you, if you're more sensitive, will notice even going into a room, there's some rooms where you just don't feel comfortable there, and some people you just don't feel comfortable being around. And it's, you know, nothing personal, it's just your vibrations up here and you're resonating up here and they're down here, and that space may have been imprinted with lower frequency information that doesn't resonate with you, and so you'll go somewhere else. The fact that such fields can condition space is actually a reason why one of the issues which hospitals are having today is that they're finding more and more infection and people developing infections coming into a hospital, leaving with something they didn't have or contracting something that they didn't have when they came in. And people say, oh, they're not being cleanly enough. It's not that at all. It's that actually they come in with their headaches and heartaches and all of that. They program the field that way, and it takes on that character. And because there's nobody aware of the whole business of information fields, there's nobody doing anything to cleanse the space. And it gets dirtier and dirtier etherically. And what's happening, contrary to classical germ theory, is that they're not taking in germs. The bacteria and viruses in the human body are and always have been capable of transmuting back and forth between pathogens and symbiotic things. It's well known that your body physically couldn't operate without the symbiosis of viruses, but those are the quote good ones, and then there are the bad ones. But actually there aren't good ones and bad ones. There are ones that have transmuted into something that's pathogenic, and the ones that have transmuted into something that is beneficial. But when you're in those negatively programmed fields, then some of your own constituency starts, you know, transmuting into something that's unhelpful. You can combat that if you're aware of it, but you know, there's a need, as I say, for etheric cleansing, and it's because of the whole business of conditioning space. Excuse me. Information fields are, as I say, ideas essentially created by the collective and individual consciousness, and we've already talked about influencing probabilities. And we've talked about the fact that all that is observed within any dimension of existence is the result of an interaction between an information field, and the light field is pervasive. Okay, we're going to talk about a technology that is based upon this understanding that's been created, a technology called light field. where we built a unit called a Lightfield unit. This unit was based upon fundamental discoveries in physics related to causality, the fact that information fields cause everything else, and the understanding about the relationship between information field and the structure of dimensions and the fundamental nature of man. It has broad implications for the re-empowerment of humanity by assisting reconnection with our innate capacities. We are, as I say, multidimensional, and everything in every reality is progressively evolving, eventually, higher and higher, ascending in self-awareness and capacity. And these separate aspects of ourselves all seek to understand and triumph. And people sometimes say, what's the purpose of life? Why are we on Earth and everything? Well, Earth is one of many schools, if you will, of experience where the purpose is to evolve to a higher awareness of yourself and to own more of that awareness. If you've never seen anything but light, for example, you wouldn't know what darkness is. If you've never been anywhere but surrounded by love, you wouldn't totally appreciate how amazing love is unless you felt being unloved, at which point you really do. So we immerse ourselves in this particular training school. It's a polar. It's it's bipolar. It's what's the word I'm trying to think of? It contains both good and bad, and both opposites continuing. It's a duality, is what I'm trying to. This particular training school is a duality, and fundamentally, what you're intended to understand, first of all, is the extremes of duality and how amazing the higher reality actually is, and you are, and also developing an understanding when you're submersed in this murk of your own abilities and causality, and how you actually have the ability to master this experience and change it from dark to light. And we mostly don't do that in one experience, and many of us have been around the tree many, many times, and some more than others. And ultimately, the idea is to graduate by mastering the experience and be able to bring yourself into a higher frequency experience without just dying and going around the loop. Dying doesn't actually end anything, it just ends that particular experience, and you can choose.
So you're talking about continuing to live?
Yeah, basically life is eternal. Fundamentally,
in this plane?
Well, you can, in fact, master this experience to bring your body into a higher crystallization that is capable of moving between this experience and the frequency above it. But unless you get to the point of understanding both the combination of wisdom and love, you will not be able to transform this physical body into a higher vehicle. But you can, in fact, transfer it to a different crystallization as you do that, and you can ultimately manifest what's really called an ascension vehicle, a Merkaba, that actually will move you from one dimension of another to another. That's actually part of your own field that you get to spin certain ways by virtue of the gaining of wisdom and the capacity to love and understanding love. Basically, it takes both, not one, but both to do it. But no one is ever harmed in these realities. It's the first thing that anybody that went through a near-death experience and remembers it will tell you, is they realize, oh my gosh, I'm fine now. That was just an experience. This is reality, where you are not ever harmed. And but it all has a purpose. So this is a light field unit that we built based upon just receiving information from within ourselves in order to create the technology, using some of our scientific backgrounds to be able to interpret it and to build it, wherein there was no experimentation involved in building this unit. It's very important to use a team when you do such things, because you do not want to make mistakes when you're dealing with multidimensional technology, which this is. And because it's possible to create potentially anything that you can imagine. But some of those effects are not easily reversed, and some of them are ones you wouldn't want to see. So what we do is use a team of people that are connecting with their highest awareness. And when we get the whole team where it is all agreeing on what the information is, then we build it. And the way that you know that you got it right is it makes you happy. You look at it and say, wow, that makes me happy. And until you're at that point, you haven't quite gotten it. And certainly if there's anything about it that you say, I don't know, you're not there yet. But anyway, it was a unit designed to create an information field that is stronger than our own and much more coherent. And when a person lies down in a field like that, they start to connect levels of consciousness within themselves that have become disconnected in most of us. And they start to manifest abilities that they weren't manifesting before in many cases. Many of them manifest healing, because what happens is they start to realize that the identity that they were carrying of themselves at the level of the subconscious, which was controlling their bodily function and harmony or disharmony, started to let go of distortions of identity that had picked up in the process of living, that had manifested as physical dysfunction or disease. But the unit doesn't, it's one size fits all, it doesn't heal anybody. They heal themselves to the extent that they do that. But there are many possible experiences in them. Fundamentally, it was created just to be a set of training wheels that's a faster track than just meditation by itself to develop that ability. This is the unit in a closed position. The unit, the person lies down in the middle of it, and in the open position, the stairway slides in, and they're able to walk up and lie down, and then the stairway retracts and then closes. And they're in there typically 30 to 40 minutes. The field that's within it is nothing but a field of information. It's a thought field, if you will, that is being generated synthetically from physical geometry, from the information derived from music, and from the information derived from physical light. The purpose, as I say, is to raise human consciousness and serve as fast-track training wheels. All living beings possess an information field surrounding their physical presence. That's the human aura that we talk about. The chakras are actually, each layer of the human aura is existing in a different dimension as you move outward from the body itself, from the physical body. Each layer that you see there is in a different dimension. And the connection and circulation of those different fields is through the different chakras, which are flowing in and out and through the physical body. The information field that surrounds your physical body is actually the thing which maintains the body's existence, and the existence is continually being recreated. And it's the communication medium through which your consciousness, the individual's consciousness, directs the activity of every cell in their body. And that is, as Joy Jones perceived something that's happening at way higher than neural speeds. As I said, the individual in a coherent information field that's stronger than their own will begin to reconnect levels of consciousness, and the field's synthetically created. And the effect is increasingly sustained by repeated exposure. That is, the more you've been through it, the more you tend to maintain that higher frequency coherence. There are other ways to create coherent information fields. Prayer is an example, meditation is an example, sacred geometry is an example. All of those create information fields. After effects being reported from people going through Lightfield it tends to be universally felt as de-stressing, a profound de-stressing. But they have feelings of inner peace many times. Many of them experience degrees of self-healing, aging reversal in some cases, increased perception, spontaneous knowing, increased physical abilities, enhanced skills, and they vary with the person. People all have their individual priorities at a consciousness level, and they have different human designs, so there's no singular experience that everybody shares. They all share different experiences, not only person to person, but session to session, because their own field is changing every time they're going in there to a higher frequency generally. The fact is, when they come out of there, they're the captain of the ship, so it's possible for them to lower their frequency by virtue of the choices they make, the habits they have, etc. But it's also possible for them to sustain it and improve it, as it always has been. The net effect being generated generally is a reawakening, and the person, fundamentally, all they're doing when they're in there is they're progressively remembering who they really are without the accumulated distortion of the process of living. And the transformation occurring, as I say, tends to be pretty universally perceived as de-stressing. They come out generally feeling a surprising degree of de-stressing for the short amount of time that they were in it. It's not like just waking up from a half-hour nap. It's more profound than that, typically. With a sufficient understanding of the phenomena that I've described to you, we can bring humanity into harmony with itself and the planet. As we rise in consciousness, we make better decisions, and as we shed all of our baggage, we react differently, we attract better. We, in truth, have far greater capabilities than most of us have been individually manifesting. And the fact is that we do individually and collectively create our reality and experiences. We all have more ability to improve the world than we've been consciously exercising. The widely accepted paradigm in science has been that the nature of life is separate, rare. It's a rare product of happenstance. It's separate unto itself. The nature of man is that these are randomly evolved biochemical organism. The nature of health is that it has to be maintained by continuous monitoring and physical intervention. The classical view is the nature of consciousness is that it's a local electrochemical brain phenomenon. The nature of matter is that it's physical and independent of consciousness, and the nature of the universe is that it's physical, finite, and it's a random product of chaos. The paradigm that's emerging from leading-edge science is that life is universally interdependent and characteristic of all existence. Everything is living, everything is conscious, everything is alive. The nature of man is that he's actually, he, she, is spiritual, a spiritual multidimensional being. The nature of health is it's our natural state. We have the innate ability of all life forms in an unstressed state to heal themselves of virtually anything. The nature of consciousness is that it's multi-level, non-local, and omniscient. The nature of matter is that it's non-physical and linked to consciousness. And the nature of the universe is everywhere orderly, multidimensional, and interconnected. Leading-edge science is finding itself in agreement with the higher metaphysical concepts, which is the whole point of the lecture. Albert Einstein, obvious scientist, said, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. Dean Radin from Institute of Noetic Sciences says, history shows that as the scientific frontiers continue to expand, the supernatural evolves into paranormal and then into normal. Max Planck made the statement, there is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. Leading edge science is finding itself in agreement with the higher metaphysical concepts, also as evidenced by a couple of examples of thousands. All is infinite mind in its infinite manifestation, for God is all in all. That's a quote from the metaphysician Mary Baker Eddy. It's a quote from Edgar Cayce, spirit is the life, mind is the builder, and the physical is the result. I think all of these things are true. And I thank you.